It is remarkable how much the embryo at this early stage resembles a leech, as there were no microscopes or lenses available in the 7th century. Doctors would not have known that the human embryo had this leech-like appearance. Amazingly, this view of the embryo could only have been discovered after the 15th century, with the invention of the microscope over 1,000 years after the Quran. Although the embryo at this stage is just visible to the naked eye, it is about the size of a wheat kernel, and the details of the embryo cannot be seen without a microscope. In fact, even after the invention of the microscope, several scientists around the year 1720 CE claim to have observed under the microscope extremely minute forms of men, complete with arms, heads, and legs, within human spermatozoa. Another scientist insisted that he had seen a minute horse in the semen of a horse, a similar creature, but with very long ears in the semen of a donkey, and tiny cockerels in the semen of a cockerel. Inadequate observation or faulty experiment led to many false theories. It is even more remarkable if we consider that not only is the embryo extremely small at this stage, about 3.5 millimeters, but this leech-like appearance lasts only for a very short period of time, perhaps 4 to 5 days or so. This makes even modern observation of this likeness during this period extremely difficult. Another notable and interesting implication is that the leech acts like a parasite as it clinges onto its host and starts to suck its blood. The embryo can also be likened to a parasite where it drains the resources of its mother. Hence we should lower the wing of humility and mercy for our parents, especially our mothers, as they endured hardship in order for us to be here today. This raises the perspective that we are not truly independent, self-sufficient, or free, as even since our development in the womb we were dependent on our mothers. This should instill a sense of humility and an understanding that we are all independent on each other in some way, and ultimately dependent on God. The limitations of science. Science has changed the world. From medicine to telecommunications, science has improved our lives and well-being in ways that no other field of study has achieved. Simply put, science continually elevates our lives and our understanding of the world and the universe. Thus, it is not surprising that many of us see science as the yardstick for truth, or as the only way to establish the truth about man, life, and the universe. Although science is phenomenal, it can't answer all the questions. It has limitations, and it cannot be our only way to understand reality. The claim that science is the only method to find out the truth about mankind, life, and the universe is wrong. Science cannot prove moral truth, like what is right and wrong. Science tells us what is not what is not what ought to be. In this sense, science is amoral. It is not an appropriate means of making moral decisions. Whilst it may be used to support our moral decisions, ethical choices are beyond science. Not only is science limited by its inability to address all the questions about life and reality, but it also does not provide certainty. Certainty is not a word that scientists like to use because of the process of induction. Induction is a thinking process used in science where one makes conclusions by moving from the particular to the general. Here is an example of induction. I have observed that punching a boxing bag properly with protective gloves never causes injury. Therefore, no one will be injured using a boxing bag. As can be seen from the example above, induction faces a key problem: the inability to guarantee the conclusion. A sweeping generalization cannot be made from a limited number of observations. Immediately, we see that induction does not provide certainty. We cannot guarantee the next observation will agree with our conclusion. This is because there is always the possibility of new observations which contradict the previous observations or conclusions. This is why science continually changes. One day you will read in a popular magazine or newspaper that coffee is good for your heart, and in another that coffee is bad for your heart. Thus we cannot use science alone to establish religious truth. Science changes and improves, whereas religious claims are static, unchanging, and timeless. However, as we've seen from the examples of the Quran in this chapter, this doesn't mean that religion and science contradict each other.